knows it well, and I'm sure he's doing all of those things. He was at the epicenter of it all on Wednesday night in Oklahoma City at Chesapeake Energy Arena when the Utah Jazz and Rudy Gobert really changed the landscape of the sports world and our world in general. Tony Jones had a front row seat for it, for the good and for the bad, and now he's in self-quarantine for a bit. How are you, my man?
I'm good, man. How's everything?
I'm good. Have you worn out that Xbox yet?
It's been played. It's definitely been played.
Okay,
and
good.
I had to update my Netflix account, so that's up. Got Apple TV.
Nice.
So, and I wrote a story today.
I saw it. It's up at The Athletic if you hadn't read. By the way, now that we don't have any actual sports to watch, tonight, this would be a great time to subscribe to The Athletic because even in quarantine, Tony Jones is writing stories. So you know there's going to be good content up there. Spend the $6.99 you might have spent on, I don't know, going to a game or something like that, and get your Athletic subscription. Try it for a month while we don't have any games, and I bet you hang on, right, Tone?
Believe me, we are still going to be productive. That is a promise. So it's definitely worth it.
So he wrote the story basically that he's going to tell us now, but with some other things in there. All right, let's go back to the beginning. I talked to your friend and former colleague Maddie Lee yesterday. She was in the same arena you were in at Chesapeake Energy. I couldn't get you yesterday because you guys
Maddie refused to give me a hug.
Well, she's smart. She was smart. She knew something. There was that spidey sense of hers was going off or something like that. By the way, she's also in self-quarantine right now. So this is back-to-back days. Guests on the Bill Riley Show have been calling from self-quarantine. So walk us through it. Soto and I had left Vegas. We weren't messing with the airport after the Utes lost. We jumped in the car, and we're heading north on I-15. And we get to St. George, Tony, right around 6 o'clock Mountain Time, which is about the time the game was supposed to tip, and we found the Jazz affiliate, and we turn it on, and Locke is talking about, things are weird, the players are out there, we should have tipped by now, it's not happening, and then the players are going back to the locker room, and they're conferring at mid-court. So you're there, you're watching all this unfold. Walk us through it.
Yeah, so, the national anthem is sang. The starting lineups are announced. We're at midcourt. We're ready to tip off. And then, everything was halted. The officials met with Billy Donovan and Quinn Snyder at midcourt. The entire officiating crew. There was some communication with the league. We were, the writers, me and Andy Larson, we were like, okay, what's happening? Something's happening. This doesn't seem correct. And then, Andy was like, Tony, they're going back to the locker room. Look down, and they were going back to the locker room. Quinn motions for his guys to go back to the locker room. We all sprint down to get to the locker room. That's when we knew something was wrong, because when we got to the hallway to try to get to the locker room, somewhere which is the space where our credentials got all 100% get us. Like, we can 100% go up to the locker room door. We can't go in the locker room, but we can go anywhere up and until where the locker room is. We were halted by security and not allowed to get down the hallway to get to that locker room. And I think that was the first real sign that something was really, really amiss. Then the second real sign that I thought, I was like, okay, this game is going to get postponed, was when they brought the halftime show out. And that was pregame. And right. I was like, okay, they brought the halftime show out. They're running out of options right now. And then sure enough, the game was suspended. So, that part was surreal. And then, of course, after the game was postponed, then it's a race to try to figure out what was actually happening. And that's when the Athletic, we figured out that Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus. We put the report out. And then from there, it was just kind of off to the races for the rest of the night.
So, Tony, let me ask you, and I don't know if you've gotten a timeline on this. We know that Rudy wasn't at the arena that night. When did they make the decision to test Rudy for the coronavirus?
So they tested him for the virus earlier in the day.
So I guess my question, and I asked this yesterday, and again, I don't know the answer. Maybe somebody's got a good answer, but if they thought to test him for the coronavirus and he had been around teammates, why would they have sent the team to the arena?
Well, Rudy wasn't symptomatic until early on Wednesday. And, there wasn't a thought that it was a coronavirus. It was just a precautionary test. And, he felt well enough and he felt strong enough to play. Like, Rudy was going to play. If the test came back negative, Rudy would have gotten to the game 20 minutes late, and he would have just walked. He would have played in the game.
I understand that part of it, but if you thought that you needed to test him, you've got two options with the test. It comes back negative or positive. If it does come back positive, as it did, he has been around the team. My thought is, you thought to test him in the morning. Why not just hold the team back till you get the results of that? Because
nobody thought he had the coronavirus.
But you tested him. But my point is, they gave him the test.
They tested him to rule it out, but they didn't think that he had it. There wasn't a thought that, hey, this is going to come back positive.
I guess my thought is somebody from the Jazz should have thought those were the options. I guess you wouldn't have exposed everybody in that arena to it if you hold the team back. That's my only issue with any of that. So,
yeah, I mean, I think in hindsight that's probably fair. I also think having experienced it and gone through this in real time, there was a bunch of chaos on Wednesday, and it was unprecedented. And I think that, there wasn't a lot of feedback from, a lot of sides on what to do. And I think that, it was something that nobody had dealt with before. Once he did test positive, everything stopped.
Sure.
And I think, and for instance, Donovan Mitchell tests positive for the coronavirus. He had zero symptoms. And, and I saw him personally that night around midnight. And, he was Donovan Mitchell. There were no symptoms at all. He was asymptomatic, 100%. So it was, I think it was something that really just kind of snuck up on the team, and it was very, very it was very, very unplanned for, and everything that went on Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night was just kind of trial and error, for the Jazz and for the league and for the CDC of Oklahoma.
Talking to Tony Jones from quarantine today. He'll be in there for another week and a half as he back from Oklahoma City, exposed to it. Good news is tested negative. So once this is all unfolding, the team's in the locker room. You and Andy and I think Sarah from the D News, you guys are just kind of hanging out. At what point in time did you finally get a little information, and at what point in time did they isolate you guys to test you? When were you tested? Was it late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning? Kind of walk us through the timeline and where you guys were, and were they kind of keeping you away from people?
No, we were tested, early Thursday morning, around 12:30 a.m. Thursday morning.
Okay.
We were trying to do our job, so we were kind of posted up by the bus while the team was in quarantine. And we were taking our directives from the Jazz. We reached out to the Jazz. We reached out to the NBA and was like, hey, once these people get here and test the Jazz, they got to test us too. Like, we've been as much of that party as anybody in terms of exposure. So, we were, it was just kind of a waiting game. It's pretty ironic that you said at the top of the show, patience, because that's what it was with us. We were just sitting around, we were waiting. We got a text from the Jazz that said, "Hey, the efforts of being made to test us." That was partially reassuring. We got a call from the league that said, "Hey, they're going to test you. We're going to make sure of it." That was very reassuring. So then once we got the call from the league, it was just kind of sitting back and just waiting until we were called. Once we were called, we were taken to the locker room. We were tested with the broadcast personnel, the broadcast team, and then we were advised by the state of Oklahoma health officials. Obviously, we couldn't travel commercially,
right?
So it was really, really good for the Jazz, on the Jazz, that they allowed us on the team charter plane, and for that I thank them. So it was, it was just a lot of patience, a lot of advisement. Once we deplaned, we talked to state of Utah health officials, and we got packets and we got advisements on what to do. So right now it's just a waiting game. I tested negative, but I have to wait the full 14 days, and it's just one of those things where hopefully I'm still asymptomatic after 14 days.
This is true. Fingers crossed for that. What was the flight back like? What was the vibe on the airplane yesterday?
Yeah, it was kind of business as usual. I put my headphones in and just kind of relaxed. It was a lot more relaxing because I knew I had a negative test. And everybody on that particular plane had a negative test. So it was, just kind of, okay, let's get home. Let's reconvene when we get home, and let's figure out what the next steps are. I was thinking more of, okay, how am I going to be productive professionally? And what can I do to be the best, while I'm in quarantine, to be the best journalist that I can be over the next 14 days, and then over the weeks beyond that, because I'm covering a team that's not playing basketball right now.
A lot of stories still to be told. Luckily, we work in a medium where you don't have to be face-to-face all the time. It helps, but you can conduct some business over the telephone and some other ways too, so that will help you certainly in quarantine. Last night, you and I were kind of texting back and forth a little bit. Yesterday, Wojnarowski of ESPN.com sent out the tweet about Rudy Gobert being reckless and things like that. A lot of people reacted to that. I think you did too. Then he went on Scott Van Pelt's show last night and basically said Rudy Gobert's created a bit of a rift in the Jazz locker room. Were you aware of this in advance, and where do you think that was this rift pre-corona? Were there some issues with Rudy in the locker room pre-corona, or is this all tied to his positive test?
Yeah, so we talked about this on my podcast a little bit at The Athletic. Everybody go and listen to Game Notes. Shameless plug. I think that there have been some issues between the guards and Rudy Gobert. Rudy's wanted the ball more than he's gotten the basketball. And I think that that's affected his performance defensively, just from me watching and knowing the player that Rudy Gobert is, and the personality that he is. I think the Jazz have done a lot to try to get him the basketball. I think they've given him, token post-ups at the beginning of each half. I think they've run plays for him at the beginning of each half. And I see both sides. I think that if you're a guard, if you throw the ball in there, you want to know that it's going to be caught. I think if you're a big man, you want to know that you're appreciated. I played point guard when I was playing. I played with big men who have gotten pissed at me when I've missed them on pick and rolls. I played with big men that are like, okay, if you don't give me the ball, you can go and get your own rebounds. it's natural. That part is natural. What can be unnatural is if, all of that stuff that's on the floor is spilled into the locker room. Do I think it's spilled into the locker room to the point where there's a huge rift and, there's a huge split or divide on the team? I'm going to say no. Do I think that there's some frustration? I'm going to say that's probably fair. Do I think that there are things that need to be worked out while this team is in hiatus? I think that's probably fair. Do I think that we're at a point where, it's either Donovan or Rudy going forward? I'm going to say no. I think that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert are two guys who, at their very core, they're unselfish guys, but they're very competitive guys. They want to win basketball games. They want to win a championship. That's a great thing. What needs to happen is that they have to win a championship. For them to win a championship, everybody's got to be on the same page. Not only Donovan Mitchell, not only Rudy Gobert, but everybody in that locker room, everybody in the front office, everybody in the coaching staff. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's not on the same page, but I'm saying that for them to win a championship, that's what needs to happen. So, I think when you look at this Jazz team, I think that, they've played frustrated at times. I think they've gone through a lot of challenges this season. I think they've gone through they've had a lot of issues on and off the court this season with, just with Mike Conley, his injury, getting him back into the lineup, making him comfortable. So there's just been a lot of organic stuff that they've had to deal with. That's not atypical of what a lot of teams have to deal with. Nothing out of the ordinary, but it's just been a lot of stuff piling on.
And that was going to be my question for you. Is this just typical basketball stuff, or is this something bigger than that you feel that goes above and beyond the teammates getting me the ball type stuff, or do you think it's bigger issues, personality issues?
I don't think it's personality issues, because I think that all of these guys are great guys, and I think that they've all been, they've all been in a locker room. Like, this core has been in the locker room together for a long time. I don't think it's personality issues. I think it's a lot of organic basketball issues that have been piled on, and the crescendo is Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell tested positive for the coronavirus. And, Rudy Gobert looked careless in a viral video on Monday. Now, I told you this off air, but I thought that, the stuff that Rudy Gobert went through online, the social media beating that it took, I thought it was BS. I thought it was cheap shots. He didn't give reporters the coronavirus by touching their microphone. And if he knew he had the coronavirus at that point, there's no way he would have touched anybody's microphone. And he didn't get the coronavirus by touching people's microphone. He probably got the coronavirus by traveling to New York and Boston. That's probably my best guess. I think that people were really irresponsible on social media yesterday. I think that, going forward, I think we have to take this seriously. I think the whole world has to take this seriously. And I think that, we as a country as a whole, I don't think that we've taken it seriously enough. And that's why we're in the position that we're in right now.
Well, I'll say this, and I said this yesterday, and I say it all the time. Sometimes taking a break from social media is the best way to go to. And I think some people could take a lesson from what's happened over the last few days. And maybe while you take a break from sports for 30 days, maybe take a quick little break, and maybe you're not on it as much, and get yourself out and enjoy yourself outside, and then check back from time to time. But I don't think people need to live on social media.
Yeah, I'm probably going to live on social media for the next 14 days. But it'll be a good thing. I'm going to post a lot of funny stuff, like, throwing a remote at my TV when I lose a buzzer beater or something like that in 2K.
What's the biggest challenge the NBA is going to face? Let's use an arbitrary number and say 45 days from now they get the go-ahead to be able to play. Is it deciding whether you pick the season up where it left off? Is it deciding whether you begin the playoffs? What's the biggest challenge moving forward if they are going to continue this season? And Adam Silver's made it very clear they want to try to continue this season.
Man, there's so many challenges that I think it's hard to pick one. But I'm going to take a stab at it. Well, first, to answer your question, I think the answer of where to pick the season up, I think that's going to be an easy one. I think you got to play more regular season games, because if we go 45 days with no basketball, think of it like this. A lot of these teams aren't going to hold any kind of practice for 14 days because a lot of these teams are going to have to self-quarantine.
Yep.
So there's going to be no kind of practice of any kind for at least the next 2 weeks. And that's if nobody else tests positive. So I think you have to have some regular season games, whether it be abbreviated or what. Like let's say maybe they play 10 regular season games, more regular season games. You have to, just because you got to have these guys in shape, because you can't go from not playing 45 games to asking these guys to play at a playoff intensity. I don't think that's fair to ask the guys. I think that's asking for people to get hurt, and I think that's asking for bad basketball. So, I think that answers one thing, but I think the biggest thing is going to be, what are you going to do with your logistics while you're playing out the rest of the season? And how do you hold the NBA draft? Where do you hold the lottery? Where do you hold, the pre-draft workouts? What do you do around the Olympics? Because you might still be playing basketball around the Olympics, around Olympic time. What do you do if this season, and what do you do for an off season if this season happens to end on August 5th? So how do you have an off season? Because, the calendar flips and training camps are supposed to start in October. So I think that there are going to be a lot of questions along the way that need to be answered. And I think there are going to be a lot of challenges, not only, physically for the players, but at the highest levels of the NBA with the decision making.
That's Tony Jones of The Athletic with us here on the Bill Riley Show today from self-quarantine at a undisclosed location. All right, you've got my number. I'll be on blast. I don't have any games to do this weekend, so when you bust that controller or the two that you brought with you and you need me to run to Best Buy and buy you a new controller, I've got your back.
Well, you can give me some food and just put it at my door and just leave.
Really, just leave. Just drop it off and leave. What am I, room service?
I'm just joking.
I'll be happy to do it. You've got my number. You tell me when and where. Controllers, pizza, whatever it might be. I got you hooked up.
I appreciate you, bro.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.